It was past midnight when Sarah's flight landed at the nearly deserted airport. Her connecting flight was delayed for 6 hours, leaving her stranded in the vast, empty terminal. The flickering lights overhead and the hollow sound of her footsteps were the only things accompanying her in this eerie, unfamiliar place. Sarah sat down in a chair near the gate, trying to make herself comfortable. She pulled out her phone, but the battery was low. A quick glance around confirmed that she was utterly alone. No other passengers, no staff, just an occasional security guard patrolling far off in the distance. The airport felt too quiet for comfort. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was oppressive, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Bored and restless, Sarah decided to walk around to pass the time. She wandered through the empty corridors, her shoes squeaking against the polished floors. Her eyes fell on a flickering, closed sign above a small cafe. As she passed by, she could swear she saw movement inside, a shadow darting just out of sight. Startled, she stopped in her tracks, peering through the glass window. Nothing. The place was still, chairs stacked on tables, lights dimmed. It must have been her imagination. Shaking off the feeling, Sarah continued on. The airport began to feel like a maze as she passed countless gates and waiting areas, all eerily vacant. That's when she noticed something strange. Gate 13. It wasn't listed on any of the airport maps she had glanced at earlier, but there it was, its door slightly ajar. Intrigued, she approached. The sign above the gate flickered faintly. Flight 013. Boarding now. Confused, she checked her watch. It was the middle of the night, and no flights were supposed to be departing. Yet, as she stepped closer, she heard faint voices coming from beyond the gate. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she pushed the door open. The lights beyond were dim, casting long shadows across the narrow passageway. As she walked deeper into the unknown part of the terminal, the air grew colder, the walls narrowing as if the space itself were closing in on her. Suddenly, she saw them. Passengers. They were seated facing the darkened window, their backs to her. A wave of relief washed over her. She wasn't alone. But as she got closer, something felt off. The passengers weren't moving. Their heads were bowed, faces obscured by the low light. The eerie stillness unnerved her. "Excuse me," Sarah called out again, louder this time. But no one responded. Her heart started to race as she stepped closer. She reached out to tap the shoulder of a woman sitting in the first row. But the moment she touched her, the woman's head turned unnaturally, like a mannequin's. Her eyes were wide open, vacant and glassy. Sarah gasped and stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. These weren't people. They were lifeless, like dolls. Panic surged through her as the realization sank in. Something was very wrong here. Suddenly, the overhead speaker crackled to life. "Flight 013 to nowhere, boarding all passengers." The voice was low and distorted, sending chills down her spine. Sarah's instinct kicked in. She turned and bolted back down the hallway, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The corridor seemed endless now, twisting and turning in ways she hadn't noticed before. No matter how fast she ran, the end was always just out of reach. Finally, she burst through the door, back into the main terminal. The lights were brighter now, the normal hum of the airport returning. Sarah looked around frantically, but everything seemed normal again. No gate 13, no lifeless passengers. It was as if it had all been a terrible hallucination. Breathing heavily, she collapsed into a chair, her heart still racing. Was it a dream? A trick of her sleep-deprived mind? Suddenly, a voice behind her broke the silence. "Did you find your flight?" She turned to see a man in a pilot's uniform standing behind her, his face eerily calm. What? Sarah stammered, still shaken. "The flight to nowhere," he said, his smile growing wider. "They've been waiting for you." Before Sarah could react, the lights flickered once more, and the entire terminal went dark.